What's good, YouTube? My name is Coach, and in today's video we're going to be doing a deck list review for the First Flight starter commander deck. Be aware that there are a total of 5 starter commander decks, which are decks that are specifically made for people who are just getting into commander for the first time, or maybe you're playing Magic the Gathering for the first time. Either way, just be aware that just like how I'm making a review for this commander deck here, there will be a review for every other commander deck on the channel as well. As we do this review, I'm going to be looking for a couple of things. I'm going to see how well this deck plays for people who are brand new to the game, as well as to see if the list of cards that they are offering are worth it for players who are more veterans in the game to potentially add to their collection. And we took a look over here. We noticed that the commander deck is offering about $53 in value. I'm assuming this deck is going to cost around $29. This number is pretty low, but you would have to imagine that in a starter commander deck this would be low. So the commander for this deck is Isperia, the Supreme Judge. Isperia is a 6 costing Sphinx with flying that says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you may draw a card. When I think about new players getting into the game, I think about playing commanders that just cost maybe 2, 3, or at most 4 mana, just so that it's easy to play your commander from the command zone. I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, this commander costs 2 colorless, 2 white, and 2 blue, which to me is not very beginner friendly, because that takes essentially without you putting more mana into play, it's going to take you 6 turns to get your commander on the board. And I'm not too sure how good of an idea it was to make Isperia the commander of a deck that we're saying is for starters. In my opinion, I think Daxos of Miletus would have been a good commander for this deck. He costs 3 mana and he has somewhat unblockable, so you can attack freely, and he does something immediately when you attack. Whereas this commander requires that people are attacking you to draw cards, and it takes you 6 turns to put the commander into play, so could be better. The first card we have here is Cartographer's Hawk. So when you deal damage to a player who has more lands than you, you can return it to your hand, and then if you do, you can search your library for planes and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So this is a good way of putting lands into play so that you can get out your commander faster. Maybe that's the lesson that they're trying to teach from this commander deck, is how important putting mana into play is, so that you can play your commander as quickly as possible. I know that when I build commander decks for people for the first time who are just getting into the game, I build it around one simple and easy to understand strategy, so that they learn one aspect of the game to its absolute best, so that they can slowly build their skills over time and realize how important that is when they build and play other decks, essentially. Next card we have here is Remorseful Cleric. I mean, this is a good card. I think at one point I thought this card was may have been expensive as well. But exile all cards from target player's graveyard can be useful. It's flying, which is cool. We have a Skycat Sovereign. Gets +1 for each other creature you control with flying, and it creates cat bird tokens. The Empyrean Eagle. It's a Lord's going to give all your creatures with flying +1. So I'm already noticing a flying theme here, and I think that for new players, I actually think this is a legitimate good idea, because flying is essentially unblockable most of the time, and when you can attack without having to worry about blocking, it definitely is a very straightforward type of gameplay, which means that there's going to be a lot of attacking, which means that there should be some life gain inside this deck. We have the Jubilant Skybonder. Creatures you control flying have spells your opponents cast cost 2 more. Okay. Kangi, another type of lord. When it attacks, buffs your creatures. Pilgrim's Eye. You could take that out. Sky Scanner, you can take that out too. Warden of Evos Isle. That's going to reduce the cost of your commander by 1. Okay. Isperia Angel is going to create more flyers. Okay, so this is they weren't lying when they called this a first flight. There's a lot of flying here. Tide Skimmer, that's a decent card to put here. We have Archon of Redemption. This is a card that I put inside my Dragon commander deck. This card can gain me a ton of life rather quickly. We have an Aven Gagglemaster. Speaking of gaining life, speaking of gaining life, I was talking about gaining life earlier, so it's kind of funny how they're adding all this life gain here. This fairy formation used to be an expensive card in the past. Kangi Skywarden, another lord. Steel Plume Marshal. Honestly, guys, I'm kind of liking this deck. I think this deck actually looks pretty good. Sharding Sphinx. Sphinx of Enlightenment. Enters the battlefield, target opponent draws a card and you draw 3. Okay. Angler Turtle. Wow, we just went like, we went flying turtle. And now, creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able. That's a nice way to control the game though, but for 7 mana, that's a lot of mana. I would have liked to see more cards that act like this to put more lands into play. Because there's actually a lot of flyers that have this ability. Maybe like 2 or 3 more cards. That may be a worthy upgrade at some point in the future. Safara, oh, of course, Sky's Blade gives other creatures with flying have indestructible. Windreader Sphinx. Creatures with flying. When a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. Cool. We have Gideon. That forces your opponent's creatures to attack, which obviously you may want if you're playing the commander that you're playing. We have a Swords to Plowshares. That's a decent card for a new player to have. That's a good card. Counterspell, that's also a really good card to have for a new player. Disenchant, that's cool. Negate, another counterspell. Rally of Wings, untap all creatures you control. Creatures you control flying get +2/+2 until the end of turn. That's actually really interesting right here. To me, this is one of the most powerful plays that even a beginner can do in the first flight commander precon. We have this card Rally of Wings, which is going to allow us to untap all our creatures and then buff our creatures with flying by 2. When we play this deck, we want to be attacking our opponent with our flyers because our flyers are essentially unblockable. Let's just say in this scenario that we're going to allow Isperia to not attack so that we can use Isperia as a blocker. But let's say our opponent casts removal. Now, because Isperia is in the command zone, we can't draw cards when we're attacked. Our opponent is gonna want to use this opportunity to attack us, and in response, we can tap 2 to cast the Rally of Wings, which is going to allow us to untap all of our creatures that have 6 power, 5 power, and 5 power, so that we can use these creatures to potentially wipe our opponent's board. And we can even checkmate our opponent by defending this play around a counterspell. Absorb, Generous Gift. We have Sphinx's Revelation. This card used to be super popular back in the day. So $1.75, maybe the most expensive card in the deck. This actually, nah, that True Conviction is down there, but Sphinx's Revelation is a good card. Winged Words, Aetherize, Crush Contraband, Cleansing Nova, Migratory Route, putting more, gives you a land to your hand. Time Wipe, it's another board wipe. Storm Herd, I would probably take this card out of the deck. We only have 8 artifacts, so this costs 10 mana to play. And I don't think that there's enough life gain for this to really, I don't know. I just think I would rather put another mana rock instead of having this card here. I feel like everything else flows very well. Although this card could just literally win you the game. I will say that. So in Battle Cruiser Commander, that's a pretty powerful card. And you have counter spells to protect it, which is pretty interesting. So we have our artifacts here. We got our Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Azuria Signet, which costs 1 mana to play, 2 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 mana to play, 3, and then 4. Yeah, the artifacts in here are great. I mean, I think that because your commander costs 6, if you're a new player, just be aware that these cards right here give you more mana to play more cards, which is incredibly important. So whether they cost 2 mana to play like this one does, or maybe even 3 like this Commander Sphere, I would add another, at minimum, at least 4 cards that are going to add mana to your mana pool like these artifacts do. Or maybe like the bird over here that puts lands into play. Just so that it's more consistent with you drawing into or playing your commander. We have a Soul Snare, Favorable Winds, Staggering Insight, okay, Vanishing Light, Ever-Watching Threshold. This is basically your commander. This allows you to draw cards when people attack you. A Vow of Duty, Vidant of Thassa. Ooh, this is a fun card right here. This is a good card. When you deal damage to a player, you draw cards. I want you guys to notice, especially if you're a new player, this card right here says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. All of our creatures have flying, so that makes them difficult to block. So this essentially means you deal damage to your opponent, and then you draw cards after you deal damage to them. So I know there's a lot of cards that have this ability, so if you're looking to upgrade this deck, I would find as many enchantments like this one that allow you to draw cards when you deal damage and add all of them to the deck, which could cost you like $4 probably. We have Gravitational Shift. This is 5 mana. Creatures with flying get +2/+0. Creatures without flying get -2/-0. This is actually pretty good because this buffs your flyers, and you want creatures to be. This might be one of the best cards in the deck. And it basically just forces your opponents to have, less power when they're attacking you, causing you to draw cards. And then we have a True Conviction here, which is just gonna give all your creatures double strike, so they deal double damage essentially, and they have lifelink. And if you have this Bident of Thassa in play with the True Conviction, your creatures deal damage twice, which essentially means that you're gonna draw twice as they deal damage. So like I said earlier, you definitely need to find as many cards that have this ability and add them to the deck, because I like drawing cards dealing damage as opposed to drawing cards when my opponents are attacking me. It would keep you in the game for more time, I think. So if you're somebody that's been playing Commander for many years and you have many Commander decks, I'm not too sure if buying this Commander deck is worth it, just because if you've bought Commander decks in the past, a lot of Commander decks in the past have had all of these cards. So you may be able to just take this list and build this exact deck from those cards. But if you're somebody that's new, who's never played Commander before, I'm not sure if playing the color combination of white and blue is the most beginner friendly. I think we all should appreciate that we have the opportunity to do so. If you're somebody that's getting into the game and you want to play a color combination honestly, white and blue is incredibly powerful. It's just, there's a lot more thinking involved than it ordinarily would be with other colors, is what you'll find. However, this deck, even though we're using 2 colors that are generally known as being very controlling and very thought intensive, this deck seems very straightforward. You just play flyers, you buff your flyers, and you attack with flyers, and you draw cards. And because of that, I'm going to give this deck a 7 out of 10. I think that 7 out of 10 meaning that if this interests you, this is a good purchase. So I don't think it's going to be the most powerful thing at the table, but if you set up your turns correctly, like what we saw earlier, it'll put you in a position to win games. If you like this video, remember you can like this video, and if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to the channel. Also be aware that the bell icon is there that you can click to be notified when I do go live. I do go live on this channel, and I build commander decks. I paint Warhammer figures. We play Overwatch. We play Call of Duty. We do a whole bunch of things on this channel. So also be aware that there is a playlist on the channel for the review of all of the other starter deck commander decks. Okay, I hope you have an amazing day. Whenever I end these videos, I always say the same thing. Always remember, eat healthy, okay? Work out every single day, all right? Even if it's just for 5 minutes. And most importantly, you gotta remember to believe in yourself, all right? Peace out, people.